Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this legendary episode of the show about the show. I cannot tell you how excited I am regarding this episode. I have with me on the program tonight, or will be having with me on the program tonight, Tommy John, the former major leaguer who underwent the now infamous and famous Tommy John surgery. He's going to tell us about his decision to undergo that surgery. He's going to talk about everything that went into that decision, and he is going to talk about his recovery from that. I also have his son, Dr. Tommy John Jr. on. He has actually written a book called Minimize Injury, Maximize Performance, a sports parent survival guide, in which he talks about the $15 billion a year youth sports industry. So we're going to have them on, and they will be with us momentarily. I just wanted to say Happy Rusev Day to everybody, and I cannot tell you how exciting this episode is going to be. This is going to be a special 1 hour long episode of the show about the show. We are going to talk to both Tommy John and Tommy John Jr. regarding the surgery, his dad's decision to go through with it. I'm going to give you guys some information about the feedback, or not the feedback, but I'm going to give you guys some information regarding some stats about Tommy's career, both pre and post-surgery, and some of them are pretty surprising and interesting, if I do say so myself. So without any further ado, when they call in here, we will bring them on. But I do want to say that I'm very, very excited. It is the night of WWE Extreme Rules. The pay-per-view just started here roughly 2 minutes ago or so. And I am going to be making my picks. I think that AJ Styles is going to win the match, but I hope that Rusev actually does win, because what a great Rusev Day it would be for everybody. Oh, it would be Machka everywhere, and that would just be fantastic. I think that Ronda Rousey is going to interfere in the women's match and cause Nia Jax to lose, therefore setting up Alexa Bliss versus Ronda Rousey at SummerSlam. I think that, I don't know what the other matches are. The New Day obviously had a match. I hope that they won. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I hope it's a good pay-per-view and that things go well, because it's Extreme Rules is supposed to be extreme. So all right, so ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I am happy, pleased, and grateful to bring on Tommy John and Dr. Tommy John Jr. for this very, very special episode of the show about the show. How you guys doing?
We're doing fine. Thank you.
Doing very well. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Let's talk to Tommy John first about pitching in the major leagues. Obviously, you won 288 career games. You didn't seem to get a whole lot of attention with the Hall of Fame. I don't want to get into a big Hall of Fame discussion, because this is kind of a different episode, but do you feel like you kind of maybe got snubbed on the Hall of Fame?
Well, I think some of my very good friends were New York sports writers, And way back when I first became eligible, they were we were talking about it, and they said, well, you weren't dominating. And I said, dominating? Define dominating. What do you mean? Well, you never had low-hit games. You never had – that's domination. And I said, well, I threw ground balls, and I tried to throw low-pitch games. And I said, the name of the game is to win games, isn't it? That's what you strive for when you go out. Whether you strike out 15, if you're talking about a guy like Nolan Ryan striking out 15, he's dominating. But,
right.
A lot of hitters did not fear hitting off of me because I never embarrassed them. So that they would come up, get good swings off my fastball, off my sinker, and go 0 for 4. Well, I won 188 games, and there was a thing on Facebook today I just saw. In the history of the game, there's been 8 pitchers that have started over 700 games. The first 7 are in the Hall of Fame. The 8th one is me. And the guy was saying, is this going to hurt? He was making a push for Mike Mussina, but I don't know. Whatever domination is, the way the game is played and managed now, it's all about how hard do you throw. Do you throw 100? If you throw 100, you may not get anybody out, but you can. And I find that
you guys still with me?
Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's one of those things too that we're going to kind of get into here a little bit later on in the episode, because I think that it seems like a lot of kids or a lot of pitchers are being taught from, roughly little league age up to, whatever time they stop playing baseball, that the best way to play baseball, if you're a pitcher, is to throw the ball as hard as you can. And we'll kind of get into that. But I would like to talk about your career a little bit. You debuted in 1963 with the Cleveland Indians. I believe that was the team that had Bubcat Grant and Jim Perry on it, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Former Minnesota Twin players. Yes, they were.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you went on you played with them for 63 and 64, and then the White Sox for a handful of years, 65 through 71. What do you remember about playing for the Indians and the White Sox?
Well, the thing about the Indians, they gave me a chance to play Major League Baseball. I was talking about this the other day with friends, and I said, well, when I was at Cleveland, they had a really good pitching coach when I signed. His name was Mel Harder, and he was very smart. And, when I got to the big leagues, he was gone. He retired, and they had Early Wynn. And Early Wynn was a Hall of Fame pitcher, won 300 games and all that, but Early, he was not a good coach, or at least he couldn't coach me. But Cleveland gave me the opportunity to pitch, and my first 2 years there, I was like 2-11. A lot of guys would have been sent back to the minor leagues, but Cleveland. They sent me down for about 6 weeks in July, all of August, and then I came back up when the season was over after Labor Day. And they brought up some little fat kid that was Cuba. His name was and one, I think, in AAA ball, and I was 2-9 at the big league level that year, and So we just swapped places. But, every place I went, as I look back over my career, it was for the best. Trading me. Why would a team trade a young left-hander that was lifetime? I had a game against the White Sox that the pitching coach saw me pitch, and he said, told Al Lopez, he said, Al, if you got a chance to get this kid, we should really do it. He said he threw some really good sinking fastballs, and if you throw a half a dozen, if you work on it, you can throw 100. And that's Ray Berry's was the pitching coach.
Sure.
And he taught me the sinker, how to make the ball sink.
And they did something right, because in the 1968 season with the Chicago White Sox, you were in the All-Star game. Can you talk about being in the All-Star game back then as opposed to what it is now? I mean, obviously back then, in 1968, did they still have 2 games per year?
No, they just had the one game.
They just had the one. Okay.
We played our
Can
game.
You talk about yeah.
Well, we went in, and I was so excited that I left my baseball gear at Washington at the stadium. And when I got to Houston, I'm looking, I went, oh, no. So I had no idea who to call. And the next day I called the Washington Senators and got a hold of somebody, and they said, no, we've got it all taken care of. It's going to be delivered to your hotel or to the ballpark today, which is Monday. But, we went down and had a chance to play, and, it wasn't where back then you pitched 1 inning. The starter would go 3 innings.
Right.
And the next guy coming in would throw 1, maybe 2 innings. And you go, and we only had 10 pitchers during that game. And Dick Williams was the manager, and he got raked over the coals for doing what he did because he didn't leave anybody to pitch if the game was tied. I think the game was 1-0. And he said, look, Mel Stottlemyre, you, Tommy, and Gary Bell will pitch the 9th inning. Mel, you'll get the first out. Tommy, the second out. Gary, you get the third out. If we tie it up, or they tie it up, you'll pitch the rest of the game. Okay, so Stottlemyre went out. Boom, got his out. I went out. I gave up a base hit. The next hitter gave up a ground ball, and it was a 4-6-3 double play. The inning was over, and Gary Bell's still in the bullpen looking for a chance to come in and pitch. And every time Cleveland Indian functions, I said, hey, I'm really sorry about that. I said, I wasn't doing it on purpose. It was just my inability to get batters out.
Now, you ended up actually getting traded after the 1971 season. You got traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers, obviously for Dick Allen, who a lot of people also should be in the Hall of Fame, where you posted a pair of 20-win seasons and you were an All-Star twice. You played in the 3 World Series with the Yankees, played against the Dodgers. But it was the 1974 season that really kind of changed everything. So in the middle of the 1974 season, you're having a great year. You're 13-3. The Dodgers are going to win the pennant for the first time in 8 years. And what happened?
Well, I'm pitching a game, I think it was the 17th of July, and I've got one more start, which would have been Sunday. And I'm pitching against Montreal and I forget the other, maybe the Mets. And, you know, those were not the hardest teams to go. So I had a chance to be 15-3 at All-Star game and didn't get picked on the All-Star team. And so anyway, I'm pitching and I'm down 1-0, and I got a runner on first base, and I throw in a sinker, and I threw it, and oh my God, I had this searing pain in my left elbow, and I went, oh man, and I shook my arm, and I got back, and I threw one more pitch, same pain, and I just kind of walked off the mound, and I told Walt Alston, I said, I've hurt my arm, get somebody in there, and told our trainer, I said, Bill, get Dr. Job. He said, I've already signaled for him. And I went down in the clubhouse, changed out of my wet uniform and put dry clothes on, and went into the trainer's room, and it was, he examined me. We didn't have MRIs then, so you could only do a manual where you manually open the joint. And next day he wanted to see me, so I drove out and saw him, and he said, I think you've torn a ligament in your elbow. And I went, oh, what does that mean? You tear whatever, you're out 10 days or whatever. And he said, well, oh no. He said, I've never really seen one in the elbow like this. He said, if we're lucky, it'll heal. So we took some time off. I threw batting practice, and I took 3 weeks off, and then I started throwing lightly and tried to go back and throw batting practice. And as soon as I got on the pitched mound, it would start to hurt. And then our trainer, Bill Bueller, taped my elbow up, much like you would a sprained ankle, to keep it from opening up. And I could throw pretty hard that way, but not good enough, consistent enough to win in the big leagues. So then we got down to the point that I'm looking, it's August, the middle of August. How much longer are we going to do? What are we going to do? Is it going to be? And then it was the 1st of September, and I pitching in, tried to throw a batting practice in Atlanta, and I couldn't do it. It just hurt. I went in, got on the phone, called Dr. Job, and he said, okay, come in to see me tomorrow. So after the game that day, we flew from Atlanta to San Francisco, and then I just got on a plane and flew down to L.A. and went in to see Dr. Job when we made the decision that something had to be done. And he said, I've never really done this before in the elbow of a pitcher at the highest level that you can pitch. He said, I've done ligament transplants in polio patients in the ankles and stuff, but never on a major league pitcher's elbow. And so he sent me down to see a hand specialist, and I saw the hand specialist, and he examined me, the same thing, and he was from Tennessee, and he goes, boy, you sure done it. He said, yeah. I said, well, what do you think? Well, Frank and I talked, and we're going to do a tendon transplant. And he said, if in a year or two that you can throw the ball from the mound to home plate without any pain, it's a success. And I said, well, how about pitching? He says, don't even worry about that. You are going to do that again. I went back to see Dr. Job that day, and he said, this is going to take a while. And my thing was, if you do your job, I will more than do my job. And
Right.
he has always said that surgeries, the surgeon does about 40% of the operation. The patient has to do 60 with rehab. And I said, if you do your job, I will do more than my 60. And he said, okay. He said, that's a deal. And my words to him was, let's do it. And we figured out the date was going to be September 25th, 1974.
And that was the day that everything changed for not just you, but for baseball and pitchers going forward. Tommy had the ulnar collateral ligament, also known as the UCL, in his arm, replaced with a tendon from his right forearm. As he mentioned, it was done by Dr. Job on September 25th. And you spent the entire 1975 season in recovery. And it's interesting because when I was doing research for this, I came across an interesting piece of information. You actually had a teammate that was a former major league pitcher now, but you had a teammate at the time that had a PhD in kinesiology who really taught you how to completely change the way you went about pitching.
Wrong.
Can you talk about
Wrong.
Wrong?
That's Wikipedia.
Okay.
Yeah, that's false news.
Oh, okay.
False news. No, that Mike Marshall, very, very, very intelligent. He never worked with me on anything.
Okay.
When I came back throwing, our pitching coach with the Dodger team was a guy named Red Adams, and I said, Red, when I'm throwing the ball exactly like I before the surgery, and I got that down in my notebook, I will. And so every time I threw, I wanted to make sure I was throwing the ball exactly like I did before I pitched. Mike didn't do anything.
Okay. You were out in 1975. You came back in 1976. You were 10-10 that year, which I guess at the time was considered pretty good. You went on to pitch until 1989. What were you thinking your first start back? Because, a lot of times you hear when pitchers take like a line drive to the face or something like that, that it can kind of affect them mentally. Did you have any maybe nerves or issues when you threw that first pitch or when you really kind of reared back?
Well, I pitched in a ball game in a competitive game 1 year, 1 day after surgery. But it wasn't in the major leagues. It was in the instructional league in Arizona. I was pitching against a bunch of young California Angel players and through 39 pitches. And I wanted to go on and pitched another inning, and the Dodgers said, no, we had you down 3 innings, 60 pitches. I said, well, I've only thrown 39. Yeah, but you used up your innings. And I said, oh, okay. All right. So I threw 7. I think I started 7 games in that fall league in the instruction down there. And I told Al Campanis, I said, Al, the next time you'll see me is in spring training. I'm done. I said, I've been throwing the ball. It's time to take a rest. And he was kind of upset with me because he wanted to, they wanted to make sure that they had a viable product. And, to hell with what I was going to do down the road, but I didn't. I didn't touch a ball again until I had a time schedule when I started to work out before spring training, and it was the Monday after Super Bowl, and I started throwing a baseball. And I threw, and the funny thing was when I came back, in that 1976 and quitting in 89. That's 13 years. I never missed a start in 13 years. So whatever Dr. Job did, whatever Bill Bueller, our trainer, did, whatever I did, had to be pretty good, because you pitch all those games and win all those games and not miss a start. That's pretty good.
And you actually won 164 out of your 288 games after the surgery, and that is 40 more than you won before it, and one fewer than Sandy Koufax won in his entire career. Which I kind of think is interesting.
This is what the pundits. This is what the pundits said. You know, some guy wasn't nominated. Well, yeah, that guy 10 won 175 or 6 or whatever. But his ones were better than yours. I said, I beg your pardon. His ones were better than yours. I said, was he getting a Jewish discount? You know, I said, what's going on? No, come on. I said, he went out to win a ball game. I went out to win a ball game. We both won ball games. How are were his lower hits, higher strikeouts? Yeah, it's win. There's, you know, and that's what all this BS gets to me about. Well, your wins weren't as good as Sandy Koufax.
Right. Let's switch topics here. We've kind of gone through your career. Let's switch topics now and kind of talk about, you had mentioned your decision to have the surgery and kind of what led up to that. Let's, Tommy John Jr., Dr. Tommy, talk to me kind of about what you're doing in terms of how you're trying to help youth sport. Let's start there.
Well, having been in the performance and rehab business for over 17 years, I saw a trend, and I did over 11,000 baseball lessons as well. So I was just like many of these former pros that don't have much to do after you get done. You hang up your spikes, so you figure you're just going to get involved with doing private lessons. Now, the lessons, these kids coming in were experiencing and showing and expressing these injuries of people that I was working with in their 40s, 50s, and 60s age-wise. So the degenerative conditions were showing up in the 10, 11, 12-year-olds. So instead of continuing to do lessons more and more and make a profit off of what was going on, I realized that was a part of the problem, and that these kids doing lessons in the wintertime, playing more sports in the one specializing early on, something wasn't right. And I started to notice it was across the board, not just baseball. So I ended up closing my baseball school, went back to chiropractic school, got my doctorate in that just to amplify and enhance the training and rehab I was already doing. And so now what I'm doing is I have a performance and healing center that is literally every human walking through the door has certain barriers or inhibitions or limitations on what's preventing them from being their best self. Maybe they have a soft tissue injury. Maybe they have MS. Maybe they have a metabolic situation or a dietary restriction of some kind that all of a sudden their body's just rejecting certain foods. So basically what I do is help get people in a better position to heal from whatever they're going through and perform at their highest level. Now, what's walking through my door are young kids, and these young kids are coming in with ACLs that are torn. They've already had concussions, and they're only 12. They've got spinal fractures, stress fractures in their spine, and they're only 13 years old. Oh, and there's Tommy John surgeries happening more in 15 to 19-year-olds than any demographic. So just under 60% of all Tommy John surgeries are happening in 15 to 19-year-olds, and that was 2014 numbers. The expected soft tissue revenue, soft tissue surgery revenue is supposed to be over $17 billion by 2022, with the main driver being youth sports. So there's a major culprit, and there's a major cause that we're looking at, and it's the youth sports industry. That's a $15 billion a year industry and growing. That and a couple other things put together has what we see as injury epidemics. Now, injuries in sports are a certainty. If you're going to play, you're risking injury, and that's part of it. Coming back is part of it.
Yeah.
Being hurt is part of it. But these epidemics are sick, and this stuff means like big time problems when you start to see these numbers. Concussions up 500% in the last 4 years. ACL surgery is up 60% in the last 20 years in 6 to 18-year-olds. And then what we see with Tommy John surgery. So my efforts are just to put a stop to this and take the word epidemic out of youth sports and injuries.
And you decided to, in addition to the business that you run, you also wrote a book about it, and your dad was kind enough to write the foreword. You wrote a book called Minimize Injury, Maximize Performance, a sports parent's survival guide. What kind of brought that decision on to write the book, and then talk to us a little bit about the book itself?
Yeah, over the course of those years, a lot of people kept saying, it'd be amazing if you could, like, where'd you learn all this? Where'd you gather all this? And nobody learns from one book. And if anybody tells you they're lying, or it's not somebody that's a master of anything, and you wouldn't really want to go to them. But it's just snippets of a bunch of different areas that I've just researched and clinically tested and experimented on myself over the course of thousands and thousands of hours, where I've put it together into one manual, so to speak, to put the power back into the hands of the parents, because I can only help who walks through my door. And a lot of the times nobody wants to admit that they have a problem. And so what ended up happening with everything kind of coming together and all the right people being involved is now I've created a book that literally takes it out of an organization. We don't have to rely on a doctor to do a study to solve this riddle. We don't have to rely on Major League Baseball, the NBA, or the NFL. There's no physical therapist. There's no organization. There's no training center in Florida or Texas. There's no special place. It's literally in the hands of where the problem's coming from, and that's at the home. And so now these people, whoever it may be, can go ahead and dive through this and digest it at their own speed to make these changes back when these kids are 6, 7, and 8 years old. And that's where most of these problems are occurring. And I was fortunate, super fortunate, to have my parents raise me in a very healthy youth sports culture, because everybody assumed that I was forced to pitch and I had to play baseball, but they did it right. They let us experiment with different sports. It was never about winning. I developed so late, and it took me so long to develop, that I really wasn't good until late high school, and I still got a scholarship and still was player of the year of the state and still had all these things that everybody's trying to attain, because I was allowed to develop how a child should develop naturally. And so that's what part of the foreword is, that my dad was gracious enough to add in. And what's crazy, man, is that a lot of the things he did back 44 years ago, on feel, I now implement in my practice, not because he did them, just because that's the way. That's the way it's been. That's the way it'll always be. When you research how cultures and how people perform and develop and how everybody grooms themselves to perform at the highest level of sport and come back from injuries, it's always been a certain principle that we've relied upon, and it's just been perverted and twisted now to try to speed things up. But the principles he used 44 years ago to come back, he did it on feel, and I'm doing it based on just observation and experimentation. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. And the thing I want to know is those people that walk through your door. Your dad mentioned earlier that Dr. Job told him basically the surgeon does 40% and the patient does 60%. Obviously, your dad did way more than 60. Do you think that a lot of the athletes who get that done know that, because right now I think it's like a 12 to 24 month recovery period. How many of those athletes do you think really put in that time to get back?
Sadly, very few, and this isn't to attack them. It's the way the system is set up in America. We are a save me society now. We look to doctors to be saved. We look to a protocol to be saved, to a program to save us. Somebody save me. Somebody make me thin. Somebody make me smart. Somebody make me less tired. Somebody make me not depressed. Somebody make me less anxious. Somebody make my legs feel like they want to move when I'm laying in bed. Like, somebody fix me. And the way we promote it now is the Tommy John surgery will fix you. But nobody, it's very, very, very few, which is obvious because nobody's coming back and having the career that he did. There's nobody up against the wall. It's well, all right, I'm going to have the surgery. I mean, I am a pitcher after all. I mean, that's literally how we talk about it. And then I'll come back when I come back, and I'll just follow. I mean, I spoke to a kid who was in the Braves organization. I'm not going to say his name, but I chatted with him when he was 3 weeks in the splint. And I said, look, you've got a long road ahead of you. You've got to get to the source of this. This is going to take a lot of work, body-wide. You've got to do stuff 24/7. Every single day you're going to be rehabbing this. He's like, well, I'm sure the Braves have me. Like, I'm sure the Braves have everything under control. And it's not the Braves. It's just the system is set up. That kid had it 3 times. 3 Tommy John surgeries. Something's not right. And so that's where we're at now. It's literally, this will save me. Or it's being touted as performance enhancing, to where I'll get it if I'm on the cusp of it. And I have a screenshot, and I post it regularly on my social media, where it's my dad on the left side doing an exercise with this face of determination and grit and persistence, and he had nowhere to go. It was either figure this out or do something else. And then you have the screen split, and you have another guy, I'm not going to say who it is, but he's standing in the training room of a Major League Baseball stadium staring at the TV while he's doing rehab. And that's where we're at now. That's the level of preparedness that we have. Nobody could handle the 100-pitch count that they mysteriously came up with in the late 80s and early 90s, which is just above a 12-year-old's capacity. So now you just lowered the bar. Now the highest level of baseball isn't even matching that level because they're not able to sustain what they're burning now. And to be totally honest, in fairness to the teams and surgeons and doctors, the mileage on those Ferraris is so high that you wouldn't pay $10,000 for a Ferrari if you knew the mileage on those guys. But that's what you're trying to do. What's the tires like? What's the mileage? What's the injury history, the accident history? And it starts when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. So if we want to change Major League Baseball, you have to start at the youth level. Or the only other option is to pluck every Major League pitcher out of the big leagues for 12 months to 24 months, just like you said, 24/7. Focus on revamping and rewiring your entire system, emotionally, physically, and intellectually. No throwing until that first phase goes through. Then you start coming back, and then you go back to competitive baseball. Maybe we could save the big leagues, but there's too much money involved, and Scott Boras would never allow that.
So you don't think it's so much that, you know, maybe on the fans here, the surgery didn't work. You think it's more maybe the player's not doing what he needs to do to get back to the level that, let's say, your dad got back to.
And again, in all fairness, the player needs guidance, you know, and the player has so much faith in that system. It's like, hey, what should I do? The system in general is failing them. The surgery is the surgery. And, I mean, you replace the part, but you still have to plug the fridge in. You still have to make sure all the other wires are intact. You still have to make sure it's cleaned out. Like the motor being changed out, okay, big deal. Now what? And so the surgeons are off the hook because the surgery is the surgery. It's mechanist. It's replace the part. Now I'm off of it. That's why I don't know why we keep interviewing them. They don't know about performance, healing, and rehab. They don't know about function. They know about broken parts and what to do to replace them. But literally the players, the amount of work it would take to prevent it in a healthy person is so extreme at the highest level of sports that once you have a surgery, the amount of work you have to do now in addition to, I just don't think they have a clue. And if you talk to Tommy John about what he did on a daily basis, there was none of this 3-day-a-week rehab. 3 days a week, throw 2 bullpens, 40-pitch max, at-home rest. It was all the time There was something he was doing at all times for the next 14 years, and he never missed a start because of his elbow. So something was right.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we brought up the name Sandy Koufax earlier, and to me, he seems kind of like a very interesting case because, you know, for many people who don't know, he basically had about a 10-year career. He debuted in 1955, and I want to say he ended in 67 or 68, and he burned his arm out. And it seems to me like he's somebody who maybe could have benefited from the knowledge that you're trying to impart on your patients. Does that seem accurate? Because it seems like he just went out there and tried to throw harder than everybody else all the time, and he ended up blowing his arm out. Like, you know, and your dad came back and won 160-some games after the surgery and pitched many years longer than Sandy did.
And I think, Dad, you can concur, I think he would have been the first one who would have had it.
If I had been a better doctor, if I knew the physiology and the anatomy of the body better than what I did, I was absolutely 100% certain now that Sandy Koufax needed Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
And I said, so I got Sandy Koufax surgery. And
right.
He laughed and he said, yeah. But he said, I just didn't know enough then. And I said, well, how did you know mine? And he says, my God, Stevie Wonder could have seen your arm was bad.
And on that note, it's one of those things that if you're going to burn that high, you got to think that we build in a pyramid. That every human athlete is built in a pyramid of 3 sections. The bottom section being the broadest, the middle section being a little less, but built on top of that bottom, and then the top section being the smallest. Now, the top section in an athlete is your sport, your skill. So that's throwing a baseball. But where we keep trying to make all these changes is at the top part. Let's control pitch counts. Let's work on the mechanics because one guy on MLB is going to show you how to throw the way to prevent all injuries. But nobody's dealing with, they're going top down kind of a thing. And even that top part of the pyramid is something my dad, Smoltz, some of those old school guys that everybody kind of makes fun of now because it's a different game, if you want to call it that. But if you take that top part of the pyramid, the baseball part, and you expand it even more, that baseball pyramid is built like a pyramid in and of itself, with the bottom part being playing catch, throwing sub-max a lot, getting on a mound and throwing a lot. And then the middle part is throwing long toss, throwing heavy footballs, throwing heavy baseballs, doing all these whatever. And then the top portion is your game, your 100-pitch game, which nobody seems to be able to sustain now. So that pyramid is built on another pyramid, and so those pyramids are inverted now in America. And so that's what we're losing. And now I talked to a surgeon the other day, and the solution isn't just have major league pitchers start throwing more. Because if they did, they would just start blowing stuff left and right even more so, because they're so not conditioned to handle the little they're doing now, even though it seems grandiose in nature. A 98 to those guys was still 86 to me and 88 to my dad, or 85 to my dad. I tried to throw that hard. That's just my 98 was 86, so I know the forces are greater, but the systems creating those forces are greater. So you can't say like, oh, well, he's big, he's going to get injured. It doesn't match that way, because everything should come along together in an appropriate developed human, and they're not developed at all.
What are some of the best things that, because you talked about it earlier, how you kind of grew up in the perfect system, and that you got nurtured correctly and you were taught how to take care of yourself, and your parents really did that. And I assume having a dad who played Major League Baseball, he was really able to kind of help you and say, okay, here's what you have to do to get to this point. What are the biggest things that kids today can do to be successfully healthy and avoid having massive arm surgery or elbow surgery?
So that's the big thing. And everyone's going to look for that single finger to put in the dam, but what they're missing is that the dam's overflowing, and that it's going to be a whole bunch of things. Now, in defense of the comment about my dad, I had a major leaguer in the house. Therefore, I learned how to throw appropriately he never touched mechanics. We never stressed. He never created a stressful environment for me to pitch in. I remember I would ask him, I would constantly ask him, can you teach me new pitches? Can I learn? And there was a time when that was going to happen, and it wasn't going to be when I was 12 years old. But I'd ask him. I mean, it got to the point to where I even asked him, I want to hit in the wintertime. And my dad's like, okay, no. Like baseball is summer and spring. But I go, I want to hit this winter. And he's like, okay, well, you know, so he got some baseballs from Yankee Stadium. He bought a net in a garage in New Jersey, and he stole a traffic cone from Cresskill, from the streets of Cresskill, New Jersey. And the traffic cone was a high strike. So it bothered me because I didn't want to hit a high strike. It wasn't my sweet spot. And I said, Dad, this isn't a strike. And he's like, it will be. And so the thing was, I just hit. He didn't sit and watch any of them. Like, he just left the garage. And then I stayed in there and hit because I wanted to. Again, that's one of the problems we've got now is you got these helicopter parents. You have everybody pressing to try to extend and draw out this elite youth for fear that they're going to be missing out or they're going to be left behind because the youth sports industries have wielded this fear. It's their sales pitch. If you don't start at 9 or 10, you will be left behind in high school. That's the pitch. You will not make it. And that's just not true. That's not how anybody develops in the hottest pockets of the world producing these athletes. That's not how you do it. So if you think about this, early on in 9, 10, 11 years old, 90% of their work week in their athletic pursuits should just be general movements, with 10% being skill, meaning throwing baseball, kicking soccer balls, shooting basketball. But in this country, it's 90-10 the other way. And we're competing. So play as many sports as possible to what the child wants to do. Let the kid figure out what sports they want to do, because here's the thing. One, it's their deal. It's their lives, and the decisions we're making on are having these profound impacts later on in their life that they're going to have to deal with, and medications and rehab and everything else because of the decisions you're making now. So let them decide what they want to play. One, bodies mature at different rates. So 1 year a kid may excel at one sport because he's shaped a certain way and developed at a certain level. And the next year they may have had a growth spurt, or they may be developed certain systems further along that made them better at another sport. And if not being allowed to explore that, they would be stuck in the one sport. Like Carl Lewis was a profound soccer player. If Carl Lewis were to play today, somebody would have locked him in on soccer, and we would not have had all those historical moments of the gold medals that he won in the Olympics. And that's just the sad part now. So one of the biggest independent variables, the greatest risk factor in youth sports, youth kids getting injured, is sports specialization early on. So it's playing more than 8 months a year in your single sport. And we know this, my dad knows this, is that the highest level of baseball, highest level of sports don't play year-round. So if they're not able to, physically, mentally, emotionally, then there's no way your 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old should be able to either. And what we've got is we're experiencing an increase in elite youth, but a dysfunctional teen in adulthood. So we're just drawing out this thing that they would have gotten to already. They just can't sustain it. So one, play as many sports as you can. Don't specialize. Outside play as much as possible. Limit technology. No smartphones until late high school. I know that's going to be a bear, but these pads, these screens, these computers, these kids staring at it has nothing to do with inactivity. Inactivity is gross. It's across the board. We're just a soft, non-moving nation. That's just it across the board. But the bits of information coming off these screens are lowering the immune response because it increases a fight or flight response in these kids. So I have kids coming in who are underslept. They stare at screens. The immune system can't heal a flu, let alone a torn ligament. And so it's this combination of a lot of things. Another thing is to look at are the foods that we're nourishing them. A lot of these kids are overfed and malnourished. And if you look at that paradox in terms, meaning they're overfed with foods that aren't food. So there's no diet that's going to save them because there's just no diet that'll ever exist. That's just the way. Everybody's different. But the big rule of thumb that I love to use is eat foods that rot. Make sure that they're real. If a kid loves only one vegetable, eat just that one vegetable. Don't worry about it. They'll change their palate over time as their bodies change. But They need certain foods to help nourish and rebuild and remake themselves. Bedtime before 11. We need to respect sleep. No screens, no computers. Limit their tech time. Kids are in 4 to 6 hours a day of sitting in front of a television or a computer or a pad of some kind, and that's just tearing away at the systems of these. The physical competency of these kids is atrocious, and what they're looking to the sports to save the kids. Like, well, my kid plays 2 sports, therefore he has a hall pass from being active at home. I've heard that. And now here's the deal. Only a quarter of sports provide the 60 minutes of vigorous activity that the government recommends. So only a quarter of the sports are providing these kids. And we were ranked in the last study 47th out of 50th of fit kids in industrialized countries. We're 47th out of 50. We're not doing well. We couldn't field a World Cup team. How embarrassing is that?
Right.
And when you talk to a Danish, there's a Danish coach, I believe he was Danish. He was talking to a guy named John O'Sullivan at Changing the Game Project on a podcast, and he said, you American youth sports people train your athletes to be slow. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, you have 5 games in a weekend on these kids that are developing. The first game, all kids go in at 100% mental, physical, intellectual, emotional capacity to learn and compete. The next game, they're at 80%. The next game, they're at 75%. And then the championship game, all of them are playing at 60, 65%. So now, when are you supposed to learn? How are you supposed to learn? So they're learning at this lower level, whereas those countries that are in the World Cup, they'll only play 20 games in a year. And the kid goes in each time because they're practicing and moving and developing their bodies appropriately, where we, to make a buck and try to enhance early because we've got to do it now. We're a now immediate gratification society, and the biggest thing that's paying is it's not the pocketbooks of the parents, it's the kids, and they're going on operating tables and having to rehab from their childhood. So it's a multifaceted solution. It won't happen in a day. The whole family has to be behind it. But I think the biggest thing and the most empowering thing is to know that it's in your hands. That's what's so great is that everything I'm talking about and everything that's discussed in the book, it's on you. It's in your hands. But that's a big accountability bug right there, and that's going to be a lot for a lot of parents to have to go through. But I think for the sake of your child, I think it's worth it.
Absolutely, and we have about 7 minutes left, and I want to give you guys a chance at the end of the show here to promote your book a little bit. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask your dad. I'm a gigantic, lifelong Twins fan. Can you give me a Harmon Killebrew and a Kirby Puckett story?
Harmon Killebrew. Well, I hated to face Harmon because he was a good low ball hitter. You know, he wasn't very tall, and he had we never had scouting reports on these guys, and I would throw in that little dinky sinker of mine, and I runs off of me. He was most prolific home run hitter off me, and if it came down, I would walk in and face Tony Oliva. That's how smart I was. But I could get Tony out. I could get Tony out, but Harmon was tough, and Kirby Puckett, you know. That's why I make the statement that baseball, you don't have to be 7 feet tall to play baseball like you do in basketball, or you have to weigh 280 like you do in football.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
right?
You can be tall like Randy Johnson, short and fat like Kirby Puckett, or someplace in between. and you can play. But I remember Puck coming up. I was with the Angels, and in his first years up, God, he was just a skinny kid. Came out and, God, could he hit. Holy mackerel. Just right off the bat, you went, whoa, what's this guy doing? But the good hitters never hit the ball to one field. They used the good hitters hit the ball to all fields. Now, Killebrew was not a great hitter. He was a great home run hitter, so he pulled the ball. But if you want to see the thing about Harmon or how good Harmon was, go to the Mall of America and go to where home plate of the old Metropolitan Stadium.
Yep.
And then look up on the wall and see where he hit a home run, and you'll go, holy crap. He hit it there. Yeah, he hit it there.
Yeah. And I believe Kirby Puckett made his Major League debut against the Angels, and I want to say he had 3 hits in his Major League debut, something like that. So, yeah, like you said, he
might have.
hit the ground.
I think he faced Jeff Zahn. I believe the left-handed pitcher, Jeff Zahn. Yeah, I remember full well of him coming up, and nobody knew him, and who is this guy? I don't know. He's just a skinny kid, and then he got some heft on him.
Right. And like you said, too, one of the great things, and to use an analogy or to use players that people today will recognize, is you can either be a Jose Altuve or an Aaron Judge, and you can still succeed.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And the thing...
Yeah.
The thing that I used to I had this thing in my mind that I wanted to run in the New York Marathon. I had this goal, but every time I started building up miles, my knees and my hips and my ankles started to hurt, which told me I was too heavy to run like that. But that was my goal, and I would talk to these running coaches. Tommy, you got to build up to 150 miles a week or whatever to run in a marathon. Well, now when I'm pitching and I'm getting ready to pitch, if I only throw 40 or 50 pitches one time in between starts, am I going to be able to throw 125 pitches in a ball game? No. I was told when I coached in the minor leagues that a pitcher's arm starts getting tired at 75, 80 pitches. And my thing was, why? Why does it have to start to get If you train and throw more pitches in between your starts, you can train to throw 120 to 30, 35 pitches without any problems.
Absolutely. And we have about 2 minutes left. Tommy won 288 games in his career, and that rate number 7 among 7th highest among left-handers in the history of Major League Baseball. And I believe he also has the all-time MLB record for no decisions with 188. Is that correct?
I don't know. I just heard that.
Okay. Yeah,
but I know. I think I have the highest ground ball to fly ball ratio in the history of the game.
Sure. Gentlemen, I cannot tell you how great of a thrill this is for me. Tommy, I just want to let you know that Dick Bramer is still calling games for the Minnesota Twins. So if that helps put things into perspective, I know he was your broadcast colleague for a few years. He's still calling Twins games. I cannot tell you,
but
guys,
is he letting his broadcast partner get his? Is he letting them get their time in? Dick went one game. He went 3 innings. And I never, as the analyst, I never got a word in. He called the play, described the play, why the play happened, 3 innings.
Sure.
And I'm just sitting there, and I look at him, and he went, "Oh, Tommy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just got caught up in myself." Okay.
Well, his the play-by-play or the analyst is Burt Blyleven, so he gets quite a few words in edgewise. Yes.
Right.
Guys, I cannot thank you enough for both coming on the show. It was a fascinating show. It was a great hour. Definitely need to change the system in the way that we're treating our athletes, starting as young as 6 years old. Mr. Tommy has a book written with his with the foreword again being written by his father. It's called Minimize Injury, Maximize Performance: A Sports Parent's Survival Guide. Where can the book be found, and what's your website?
If you go to don'tcutmykid.com, all the information you'll need is right there.
Okay, perfect. And that's don'tcutmykid.com. Guys, thank you so very much. It's been my distinct honor and privilege to be able to come on this podcast with you guys and to have you share your experiences and to tell the story. And it sounds like it's another epidemic that we really, hopefully, will be able to change, and it all starts at home with the parents.
Thanks for having us on. And if you get the book is phenomenal. Tommy's done a great job, and it's just parents have to listen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity and for helping us in our mission.
Thank you guys very much. You guys take care. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Right.
Thank
you
you
as well.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, that was Tommy John, former major leaguer, winner of 288 career games, as well as his son, Dr. Tommy John Jr., a chiropractor with a sports medicine background. You can hear Dr. Tommy John got kind of fired up there when he was talking about it, and as well he should. It's clearly an epidemic that we have a problem with in America, and kids need to learn everything from better sleep habits to better workout habits to better eating habits, and that, as he said, is a small part of the process in becoming the best person you can be, which also helps make you the premier athlete that you want to be. Go to www.don'tcutmykid.com for more information about his program and also his book. I can't believe I just talked to Tommy John. I mean, that's fantastic. All right, guys, thank you very much. I'm going to be doing another podcast here in about a week or so, so be on the lookout for that. Leave me a 5-star review on iTunes if you like this, and also find me on Twitter at Devlin_Clark84. I'm also on Facebook at Devlin Clark. Thank you very much, and we'll see you down the road in podcast land.